Hey folks, on Isolation Nation, we have a belief, a philosophy that mental health talk to be most effective needs to be surrounded by something lighter.
Oh, sure. I had to be adopted by vegetarian Jews.
Yesterday, there was my hair. I couldn't go and get my hair cut. The day before, it was the pronunciation of Kelly Hrudy's last name. Hrude or Rude?
Hrude.
Rude.
Hrude.
And the day before that, it was all about this. You need to make fortune cookies, chef.
What the fortune cookies?
But today I have hair product in, makes it a little bit better. There's no props, all because on May the 20th, Jamie Soleil said this to us.
I've watched my mother as a child cry herself to sleep many nights, suffered with depression.
And her story became so compelling.
She was really struggling, but yet she was an inspiration to me in some ways too, because she was so positive with me.
So inspirational.
You know, she had her internal pain and I watched that, but yet she would tell me always, you know, keep pursuing your love and your passion, Jamie, you're doing great. And she would always encourage me.
And for any parent, so relatable.
She loved me and I felt safe when I was with her at home.
So we thought, wouldn't it be amazing if Jamie brought her mom with her on Isolation Nation? So why did you bring your sister, Jamie, and not your mom? Oh,
yeah.
So smooth. Hold on, I gotta put my glasses on.
I did my hair for you.
That is awesome. Are you mocking me, by the way, with that terrible hair yesterday?
And
if you are, good for you.
I saw your post and I'm jumping on the bandwagon with all your fans commenting. So here you go, everybody.
But you unfortunately or fortunately, you can't look bad. Right? Like I genuinely looked like hell yesterday, but you got a long way to go to get to hell.
You just forgot the lipstick.
Don't make that assumption. Okay, so you invited your mom to come on, and I'm so excited and so pleased and so thankful that Patti Soleil, that you would join us. How are you?
I'm great. And I'm grateful. Thank you.
Well, being grateful is a good way to live your life. How do you feel? Compared to, I don't know whether it would be 6 months ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago, because Jamie was talking about how, you know, depression played a big factor in your life. How do you feel today?
I am really happy and, proud in some ways to say that I feel really good. I had to do a lot of work, cognitive therapy, a lot of different things I tried. But today I feel like a completely different person. Can't even really relate to how I was then.
You know, I would share an identical experience with you. Maybe the timing was different and maybe the circumstances were different, but I've gone through it 4 or 5 times, and I can tell you that even just thinking back, I'm thinking back to 2008, which was the last time that I was really deep in the hole. It's the last time I wasn't on medication. And I just, I almost want to start crying just thinking about it. It was so painful, but the joy of feeling better. And I saw that on your face. And I loved that because you know what terrible feels like. And now pretty good feels like the greatest thing on the planet.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's I don't, like I said, I do not relate to the person that I was in those dark times. It's still a memory. Like I remember it very well. Like I could recall a lot of things, and some of them, bring me pain still to think about them. Because when I was in that state, needless to say, I was many times upset with myself, beating myself up that I wasn't better mom, better anything, because I think that's one of my big problems was that I didn't have a lot of self-love or self validation. Like I didn't feel worthy. I know I didn't feel worthy of goodness. And so I took every opportunity to beat myself up on top of what was already going on chemically inside my body.
You know, but there is a definite relationship between what's chemically going on in your body, as you say, and this feeling of low self-esteem, low self-worth, because you know who else has experienced that? And everybody else that has had severe depression will tell you that their self-esteem is always affected, that they hear negative thoughts playing over and over again. And they tell you these negative thoughts, the things that you fear the most, right? So you would hear something different in your head than I have heard in my head. And I still experience it from time to time, but we all feel that way.
Right. And you know, I also remember, this just popped in my head now, that while I was going through that darkness, those many years of darkness, I was a real good actress. I put on quite a front. And I know, because people told me that they couldn't believe I struggled with depression because of the my ability to work and to parent and to do things and to smile a lot and to act like I was just fine, when in fact I wasn't at all. And I don't know if you were like that, Michael, but
I did a TV show every day, like every day. And not one person ever said to me, people in my life all knew this was never a secret, but nobody, you know, who watched, and we're talking about millions of people a day. Okay, that was a lie. We're talking about thousands of people a day. And not once did anyone ever say, hey, are you okay? Because we get really good at faking it. And we show people what we think they want to see in us as opposed to what we're feeling. So if I'm having a conversation with Jamie, for instance, you know, back in the day when I might have been interviewing her on Off the Record, I would show her not what I was feeling, but what I thought she wanted to see in me.
Exactly. Exactly.
Jamie, I'm sorry. I'm sorry we're excluding your daughter from this conversation.
I know.
It's just, you know what? It's going really well with your mom. Your mom is amazing, and your mom has such a compelling story to tell that don't say a word, Soleil. That would be you, Jamie. Finish what you were saying, Patti.
Oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought, but that's okay. Thank you. I think this is a really important subject because mental illness is definitely totally misunderstood, and in many cases nobody wants to talk about it at all, when in fact, what is it, 2 out of 5 Canadians, or maybe even 3 out of 5, have some degree of mental illness for periods of their life. And so to push it down and not be able to share our stories and to relate to each other and hopefully, you know, bring inspiration and some kind of light is a shame. And I really would like to thank you, Michael, for being on this platform, because I think it's huge. And but you know what? For men, it's harder.
It is. I think it's a bit harder for men, but also this is what you need to understand. And that is, you're sitting there in that chair and you're not the least bit ashamed or hesitant, or you don't sound weak. So it seems like telling this story is reasonably easy for you, which is, my point is that it's easy for me too. So when people say, oh, you know, good for you, you're doing something good with it. Yeah, that's true. It is effective in helping others, but it doesn't take any effort. It doesn't take any pain for me. It's the easiest thing in the world. And you're proving in a lot of ways that it's easy for you too.
Well, thank you. It is easy. Like, I have no, as I said to you earlier in an email, I have no boundaries that I don't want you to get into, or areas like that. So, you know, whatever comes out of this is meant to come out. It's organic. It's about the healing, right? It was the process of the healing. And
Mom, I think if I might add in here, I think part of the healing process for you, and even for me, has been the ability to use this to help other people, right? And by sharing and being vulnerable and being real about it, you're helping so many other people. And that is what's important with this dialogue.
Bang on. Like, that's it exactly. Like, if I've been saying for many years now that I'd like to be able to do something, you know, to help others. I like to be a light for people in any way I could. And if this sheds some light, then I feel really fulfilled. That'd be awesome. Yeah, it's a call. It's almost a new calling I have. I think it's kind of, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I have a
That's
little
interesting.
cliche for everything, right? But they're all invented by us, so it's not like I'm stealing someone else's. But what you're talking about is purpose to pain, right? You know, you've had
Yeah.
this really bad time in your life, and it's
Yep.
taken you, time away from your life, right? Like when you're in the hole, like you were describing, you're alive,
Oh,
but you're not really living, right? And when you
no.
get to sort of turn on your illness and treat it like it's an entity, and basically to say to your illness, you know, it's
Mhm.
really rewarding. JB, I want to ask you,
Yeah.
when you heard your mom talking about the mask and how she was
Mm.
able to fool people, you made reference the last time on the 20th of May, you made reference to the fact that your mom, and one of the things you appreciated and admired was the fact that she was able to show you a big smile, to appear to be engaged with you as any good parent would be when she didn't feel like it.
I have no idea how she did it, to be totally honest, because I've shared with you that I've had anxiety, and my last panic attack was last summer, and I laid in bed crying and felt like I just wanted to sleep the whole day away because of all the fears I had. I couldn't parent. I wasn't able to parent my children, and so she came home every day and had all these fears that were affecting her, and she would cry herself to sleep, and yet she would hold me and tell me, be great tomorrow at skating, and cheer me on the whole time, and support me with school, and support me with when I was 15th in a competition. She was just always there for me in a very positive, talk about light. I don't know how she did that, because when you personally experience it, it's so debilitating. Like, I can't believe I'm not ashamed to talk about it now, but I felt ashamed when I was going through it, because I was looking at my children going, they don't even have a mom. Like, I just physically couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't say the right thing. I was just hurting and I was crying. And so I don't know how you two have done this, and other people are doing it.
Do you want to take a stab at how you did it? And, I'm thinking, Patti, you probably don't know. I mean, it's very hard to explain how you did
Yeah.
something.
Well,
You just
yeah.
do, but go ahead, take a shot.
Well, I think when I think about it, it was like there's no option. And so because I was a single mom too, right? I didn't have anyone else in the house to, feed her or drive her somewhere or do whatever, help her
Mhm.
with anything.
But you
So
didn't have to do it. You didn't have to do
yeah,
that.
okay, but that's what I want to go to then. This is what was going through my mind when you were talking. I'll tell you how if there was an option. You're right. I could have checked out. Jamie was such a delight, though. She was so much. No, I know. She was so absolutely precocious, absolutely. She was inspiring as a little kid. She would say such amazing things that were about what she wanted to do, and with no ifs, ands, or buts. And so I believe Jamie was my light. Like, that's how I did it, because what I could do for her, I knew it actually entertained me. It actually held me up. It actually brought me into a better mind space than I was. If I hadn't had Jamie, I might have just laid down and gone to sleep and never gotten up. There's no question that she was she was my entertainment and my sole source of love and joy. There's no question about that, because I went to work every day too, put on that face, and that would have been just kind of autopilot. Again, I feel like because I was raised to be accountable and responsible and, a contributing member of society by my parents, who to this day I celebrate for everything they did for me. I didn't shut down. I didn't go on welfare or check out of the work world. I continued to work. I continued to be everything I could be whenever I was called upon in any light. But being Jamie's mom and her brother's mom, when I got to see him, I don't want to leave Jason out. They were definitely the light for me. And I don't know, maybe for everybody, your kids, they're our future. They're our, I don't know, they're little offsprings. But Jamie was especially just, I don't know, like I said, just everything about her. There were times I could have, clobbered her for sure. She was a handful, but most of the time there was a lot of laughter, a lot of happiness,
Jamie?
I'm emotional. I think it's true for a parent having the help. I mean, you think about all the single parents out there raising 2, 3 kids, 4 kids, and feeling the pressures of society and keeping up with everything. And I think that makes a big difference, because for me, I have help at home. And so I must have fallen to that, right? Like I must have felt like I could lay in bed and I could just feel that emotion. And but it's just, Mom, and Michael too, to you, it's very inspiring to see people go through this parenting and come out of it not only living a better life, but again, just really spreading the word and helping people right now, because this is incredibly powerful, and we need it today more now than ever.
Yeah.
Before we bring in professional on the show, not that we're all not professionals, actually I'm a professional, but I want to play a bit of what Sean Cullen did for you last time, Jamie, so your mom can hear it. This is Sean Cullen. We cut it down, a little sample of his song for Jamie, and he's channeling his inner Gordon Lightfoot.
Oh, Jamie Slay, I think you're greater than any other skater. Oh, Jamie Slay, come to my chalet. I'll make you fondue, cheese and bread dip for you. Oh, Jamie, one go at Salt Lake City, I'm told you can dance on the ice, and I think that you always dress nice. One day we'll meet, but don't wear your skates on the street, 'cause you'll ruin the edges.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
That was just, there's something about Sean that's, it's unusual for a man to use the word I'm going to use, but he's just adorable, right? Like there's a sincerity to him and a warmth to him that you can only do also if you're feeling it. So apparently he is a fan of yours, Jamie, as
Well,
I think
I
everybody
love that.
else on this show is. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So let's introduce Robert Paris. You are I don't need to tell you who you are. I assume you know. You are the founder and the president of Myelin Leadership International. Now, you told me last time, I said, that's kind of a weird name, and you explained to me what myelin was. What is it?
Well, myelin is a substance in the brain. When you repeat something and it becomes habit, you actually develop myelin in the brain. And that's when you repeat, and repeat, that becomes second nature. So the substance is called myelin.
So you have made your living counseling leaders on being better leaders. I know one of the areas of interest that you have had is examining childhoods and seeing what bearing the childhood has had on the adult. So neuro leadership, I guess, is one of the ways that you phrase it. So having heard the conversation that you just heard, what would you say?
Well, first of all, Jamie and Patti, I think you're heroes to come out and share this, as Michael, you have as well, and good for you for doing that. In terms of neuro leadership, we teach people how their brains work and what the impact is. And if you ask people, well, what's the purpose of the brain? Most people don't have a clue. Actually, everything depends on the brain. The brain is all about survival, period. It does a lot of things, but it's there to help us survive. Now, when we go back to childhood, we as children were totally dependent on our parents for survival, right? So if there's threats to that, that's when problems occur. So Jamie, I know I listened to your story on May the 20th. I know your parents and that divorced, and there had to be tension in the house, and then to a divorce to a child is a threat. And then I know you went to school, and you weren't part of the cool group, and so there was a constant message in your brain: I'm not good enough. And Patti, perhaps you can go back to your childhood as well. That message is constantly in your brain. So the brain is there to help you survive. That becomes a threat. So what does the brain do? It develops coping mechanisms to help you survive. Now that could be, some people bully, some people become perfectionist, some people avoid. So what I heard on the 20th, Jamie, was that the ice rink became your salvation, right? That's when you were able to escape. And that was great. And that's, again, your brain's survival mechanism kicking in. But the problem becomes that short-lived. And when you went away from the rink, you still had, and by the way, all this is done unconsciously in your brain. You still had that message going: I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. And that's all buried in your brain, which again is a threat to your survival. So in this case, and in many cases, your brain certainly wasn't working in your best interest.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a lot of nodding of the head there, Jamie. So what do you do with that? I mean, it's one thing to be somewhat clairvoyant, right? Like if she was paying you $25 to read, to read her palm, and you said, when you were a kid, you felt you weren't part of the gang, and you could go through all of that. But now, what do you do with it? Like, what's your expertise?
Well, I think it's extremely important that, again, there's two things. And I think the last time I was on, we talked about the power of positivity in terms of mental health, but that's not enough, because you can be positive, but if you have an inner story that's saying I'm not good enough, it overrides the positivity message. So we talk about something called courageous and daring leadership. And what we try to do to help people deal with their mental health issues is a process where you've got to get in touch and identify your inner story. You've got to be able to tell it, share it with other people, as you're doing on this show, and then you've got to be able to live your story. Now that is very, very difficult. Most people will try to avoid getting in touch with that inner story because of the emotional pain. And the brain, again, has very limited cognitive resource and doesn't want to go and drudge up all of this pain. So it takes great courage to get in touch with that story. And yet I would say it's the most important, liberating thing that everybody can do, because you have to understand what's the cause of all of this anxiety. And it happens from life's trauma, but usually in childhood and adolescent years. You've got to be able to understand that. And then you've got to be able to have compassion. So in terms of Jamie, I mean, I would ask you right now, if you had a picture of yourself at 4, 5, or 6 years old, right? And and you were an adult looking at you as 4, 5, 6 years old, you would probably look at yourself with a lot of love and compassion, right?
Yep.
And yet you do that to yourself. Have you ever done that? Taken a look at a picture of yourself at that age and look and said, my God, I have a lot of compassion for that little girl who had no, control over her circumstances. I don't know if you've ever done that, but that's one thing that becomes a very powerful exercise.
Okay, I like that. I often look at my photos as a child, and when I was a little girl that age, my parents were still together, and I wasn't aware of any depression or anything else. So, of course, I look at them with fond memories. But it started in late elementary school and into junior high. That's when things really shifted for me, and I cried a lot. Walking to school, walking home from school, being scared, and then not having a dad around all the time, just and being bullied at school constantly. And so I had a lot. I don't have great memories. When I think, I was actually doing an interview not long ago about this, and they asked me one question, Robert. They asked me, tell me about Red Deer. And I just started sobbing. It just triggered something for me, and I wasn't prepared for that, because they warned me that they were going to be talking about my childhood. And I had to get up and walk around. I said, clearly there's just something, I got to deal with this. And so we got into like the whole trauma treatment and everything. What are your thoughts around, like, you talked about the courageous leadership stuff. Is that sort of like trauma treatment?
Well, it doesn't really use, when we get people to tell their stories, it really isn't a deep dive in psychology. And we have a process where we use visual stimuli, very evocative photos, to help people tell their story, because when we do it through photos, it evokes the areas of the brain related to emotion and memory. So we're able to tell our stories, not just from our rational brain, but from our emotional brain. And so when we do that, we get in touch with our trauma for sure, but we're doing it in a way where we're telling our life story. And we're making a point, again, particularly as a kid or adolescent, it wasn't your fault really what happened, but again, your brain became wired, your story and your coping mechanism, one of them, which is avoidance, became wired in your brain, which carried on later on in your life. So I think, again, as I recall from your last appearance, you said you had panic attacks and you didn't know why. Well, I can tell you the inner story in your brain was feeding back all the negativity that I'm not good enough, and as well as your coping mechanism, which is avoidance. So once we understand our story, the next stage is to share it with people, as you're doing now. And because people find that incredibly liberating. And you know what? I've shared my story and all of you have done that. And you know what? There's millions of people around the world that have very similar stories. The people are different, circumstances are different, but we're not alone in this. Like a lot. So when we share our stories with each other, we have a human connection, and people come up and say, wow, that happened to me too. So that is, and I think you talked about that social bonding, which is so important here as well. So once you go through that process of identifying your story and sharing it, then our next stage is literally rewiring your brain, where we get you to write a script in your words that basically says, I'm aware that I have defective brain wiring, which absolutely isn't my fault, but today I'm strong. I've been successful, as you've been, Jamie and Patti. I know that you've been as a parent as well, that I've been strong, that I'm really, really good. And you self-affirm. You repeat that every day, twice a day for 60 days. And what we're really doing there is building myelin, or building wiring in the brain, so that when you're in a threatening situation in adulthood, rather than the old brain wiring coming on and taking over, now the new brain wiring comes on with a much more positive response.
Sign me up.
You got it.
Patti,
Right?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Patti.
Oh, no, I think that was Jamie started.
Oh,
saying.
you know, it's like your sisters, like I said before. So, you know, I can't tell you guys apart.
I'm just saying, Michael, I would love to do that exercise. I think, you know, I've had some sort of treatments and everything, but I still feel affected, and I still, you know, and I'm coaching. So I share this vulnerability with my clients all the time. And I said, it's never, for me, it's always going to be about how can I be better? How can I work on this? So this is like such a gift to be on with Robert and hearing all this, because I haven't done that before, and I would love to do this.
Patti, I need to ask you, did you ever, and I'm just taking a wild guess at it, okay? So I'm just riffing off the top of my head, but did you ever get a call at work from your daughter who thought that you needed a phone call, and maybe she played a certain song? I'm being Robert here. Bette Midler song, that's what I'm thinking. Did that ever happen?
Funny you should bring that up. I was working with clients in the showroom, and you know, very engaged, very busy, wanting to get through it so I could get home. And the phone rings. It's obviously for me. They say it's my daughter, so I always took the call. Somewhat annoyingly, I said to her, Jamie, I'm busy right now. What do you need? And she goes, I just need you to listen to something. I said, well, I don't have much time. She says, well, just takes a second, just hang on. And to this day, I don't even know how she did this. But she was, because this is back before all the technology we have today, she somehow had recorded the song Wind Beneath My Wings by Bette Midler from Beaches. And she played that whole song to me as I stood with my back to my clients, tears streaming down my face. My shoulders undoubtedly were shaking. I was completely blown away. And needless to say, I just couldn't believe it. She's 10 years old. I couldn't believe that she had that kind of wherewithal, to figure out how to record it and then to call me and play it to me, knowing obviously the effect it would have in a positive way, I'm sure. It stayed with us all these years. Every time we hear it on the radio, one of us calls the other one or texts the other one and says, listening to Bette Midler with Beneath My Wings. And it's kind of interesting because, this full circle or thing that they talk about sometimes in life, I feel like what I did for her, she did for me. There was always this full circle of something. And so when I would hold her up, pick her up, dust her off, and get her back to where she needed to be, she seemed to find ways to do that for me. And thankfully, I had that. Because like I said, I'm not sure what I would have been like if she hadn't. Here we go again. Normally, I'm the one crying. What's going on here?
Yeah, what's going on, Michael?
Well, that was my purpose. If you have criers on your show and you can't get them
you
to
invite
cry,
them back.
what kind of host are you if you can't get easy people to cry? I mean, getting Robert to cry right now might be a little bit more challenging, but just make fun of your Oilers jersey and say, how's that working for you? Although this year, I guess that wouldn't be as relevant. So why did you play that song? I know why, but tell us why you chose that song.
You know what? It was just really popular at the time, and I kept hearing it, and I thought, you know what? This song really speaks to me as a 10-year-old. It clearly really resonated with how I was feeling about what my mom was doing for me and giving me in my life. And I knew she was struggling really hard. I knew it was hard for her to get one foot in front of the other every day, and yet she did. And she would go to work, and she was hustling and like trying to just make ends meet and use every penny she had to pay for my skating. And I was grateful for that. I remember just always feeling so thankful that my mom was allowing me to do what I love. And so I just thought, what can I, as a child, Robert, you might be able to speak to this, but I don't know how I thought of this, but I was just like, how can I make her day better today? And what can I do? I was always thinking like that, right, Mom? Like I was always thinking, what can I do to make her smile today? And just make her feel special and loved, because she felt like she wasn't. And so I was like, I just want you to know, Mom, this is how I feel about you. So yeah, I mean, it was like the perfect timing that song was out too, right? Because that was her darkest time.
Right. Let me jump in. Because you can leave it on a two-shot, Phil, on those two, because I want to go back to 2002. Obviously, Salt Lake City Olympics for the final, the free skate final. Where were you, Patti?
In the rafters.
I was sitting in the stands, very, very high up, probably, I don't know, 25, 30 vertical feet up, because it was, a different kind of rink, right? It was a big bowl.
Row from the ceiling.
From the ceiling, yeah, really high. And beside me on my left were David's mother and father, and to my right was my mother. Thankfully, she was there. What a beautiful thing that was. But there we were sitting almost in the rafters, and I pretty much had to watch the Jumbotron to be able to see my daughter's face, because I wanted to see what expression was there. Because I knew she had this certain look when she was focused, and she had another look when she was kind of, getting ahead of herself and kind of, enjoying it a little too much, not really focused. And I could see the focus, man. She had a game face on like none I'd ever seen before. It was incredible. And especially after the collision at center ice, I was sure they're not coming back out. Like, she's winded, she's thrown off completely, possibly even cracked a rib. And when she came out and I looked at her face, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is going to be, I just knew in my heart, this is going to be something. This is going to really be something.
Jamie, could you see your mom?
No,
Oh, no.
It's kind of embarrassing that our parents were so high up.
Well, the tickets were free.
Yeah. And our parents had to sit and look at the Jumbotron to see our facial expressions. But anyway, she was there, and they got to witness the whole thing. But no, I didn't see my mom until probably about 11, 12 o'clock at night.
Mhm.
After the whole thing was over and we went to
At
Canada
least.
House, that's where I got my hug.
Yep.
That is,
Thankfully.
yeah.
And my dad was there too with his wife, so that was
Mhm.
really
Oh,
special
that's
to
right.
have everybody
Yeah.
everybody there.
Because it should be mentioned that although we had our issues in the family, there was drama, there was some pain and everything through the years. Jamie's dad and I have never been really like we've never been antagonistic with each other. It's always been quite amicable, and I was happy that he was there too to see that moment,
Right.
as
And
weird
just
as it was.
amazing though, that like, not amazing, but pretty wonderful that your mom was there with you. I think that,
The wind
you
beneath
know,
my wings.
yeah, this is, we're talking about this, and my mom died about a year and a half ago, and
Oh, sorry.
no, she it was time. Like we checked on her, and the best before date had expired, and it was time, because she had been so sick for so long that we didn't lose my mom. We lost her slowly, to the point where, nobody thought anything that was happening for her was good. But you were talking about how you used to try to make your mom happy, and that you thought, how can I do it? And I was just thinking, like, for one of the first times since my mom died, that I tried to do that all the time with both of my parents, that I felt to some extent like it was my obligation to be there for them. And because they gave me so much. And I felt so like, I never wanted to grow up. I was this kid who had all kinds of anxieties and all kinds of fears, but I just, I adored my parents because they adored me. And just as you were talking about that, it just, I'm pretty good at blocking things out, but somehow that broke through, and it made me sad. It made me happy, and my mom was awesome, and she watched everything I ever did on TV, everything, like literally every show, and she still didn't know how many periods there were in a hockey game. My mom was like a really bright woman, and she watched like 4,000 episodes of Off the Record. And she still couldn't have told you what a first down is in football, because she watched because of me. So it's pretty funny. Final words, Robert. You can you want to jump in and say anything? Didn't you wear a Habs hat last time? Was it?
I wore a Habs jersey, so I have to apologize for this to Habs Nation. I am a Habs fan or whatever, but I thought I'd show respect to our guest here. So
I'm just going to say, maybe change it to red next time.
Yeah, right. I get that. Right. No, I guess what I like to say, I just think in terms of mental health, I'd even like to found like a storytelling institute, because I believe that the power is so great. I think if we can all get over and get the courage to get in touch with what our stories were, which usually, again, come from childhood and adolescence, when it really, the stuff that was happening to us, we had no control over. So if we could get in touch with those stories and have compassion for us, it would just make a huge difference, and then get comfortable telling our stories, because we all have mirror neurons in our brains, and when we share stories, we socially connect with each other, and it becomes an amazing thing. So having that ability to get in touch with that story, to share it, have the courage to do it, and then finally to live it, to live your values, to talk as you're talking, the love between a daughter and mother, and vice versa. And Michael, what you just came out with, just living those values and telling the stories, I think would go a long way in terms of mental health. And I just want to say one thing. All that being said, there are severe cases of depression or whatever, and yes, those people need professional help, and certainly meds with that. So a lot of my comments are the more moderate forms of anxiety, but I think these are the storytelling part, I think, is really key.
Thank you for that. Thank you for appearing once again. And you clearly, you got a potential client in Jamie. I'm not sure Patti was actually that impressed with you. I think she rolled her eyes a few times when you were talking, and she gave one of these, blah, blah, blah. Let me ask, Patti, let me ask you this. Were you shocked at how insensitive your daughter was, making fun of me and my hair from yesterday? Were you shocked by that?
No.
No. No, not at all.
No, she's a little she's a little character for sure. She would have taken full advantage of that.
You made me cry today. I can do whatever I want.
There you go.
Yeah,
See?
this was.
She's got an answer for everything too. I just want to say, if I may, just really quickly, what Robert just talked about, the sharing and the love and everything in parent and child. We obviously all have stuff that goes on, and I did, and I don't want to go into those things right now because we don't have time. But I will say this: my parents were on a path of healing themselves and introduced me to life work methods, various books and tapes and things that I could use to get myself on positive ground. And I really want to pay that homage to my parents today, because if they hadn't done that, I'm not sure I could have done what I did, so there was dysfunction to some extent, but there was this incredible, way before their time, I think, back in the 60s,
way before their time, before their time.
Yeah, they tried to get us all going that right direction. So thanks to them.
And you have, and you passed it down to another generation. Guys, thanks so much for doing this. And, I loved it. And Jamie, I told you last time that you should be doing your own interviews, not just answering questions, but asking the questions as well.
I listened to you. I did. It's in the works.
It's in the works. I love that. Thanks, guys. And I want to do it.
I want to do it too.
It's.
Come on, Robert.
How's this?
What do you think?
Oh my gosh!
Love it.
I think I did it.
Woo!
There. How's that? We'll sign off.
That is awesome. Thank you all so much.
Screenshot.
Yeah, let's, Phil, as we go out, why don't you roll our theme? Like, what other show like this has a theme song? My glasses are a bit askew, but they also, I can't see through them because they have hair product on them now. So I just, as you can tell, I kind of need it. Okay, thanks, guys. We'll see you folks on Monday for Isolation Nation. Thanks to Jansen for giving us this shot. And I know whenever I say thanks to Jansen, they go, no, don't say that. But that makes me want to say it even more. Kind of like Jamie Soleil, a bit contrarian here, but that's okay. And let's roll the theme, and we'll see you on Monday.
Hey, everybody. It's a nation in isolation. It's a nation in isolation. It's a difficult situation. It's a nation in isolation. Now's not a good time for celebration. Feeling good, share the wealth, help other people with their mental health. It's a nation in isolation. Don't eat fiberglass pink insulation, yeah. Good advice there.